everybody, I'm Nicole from Hair of the Dog, and I'm here with my good friend, Heather Lahtinen, and we are here to talk a little bit about editing and post-processing, learn a little bit more about Heather, and we're going to have some fun today.
Which I love. I love editing and post-processing. You know, there are a lot of people that don't look forward to it or maybe afraid of it.
Right.
And I love it because you know why? I love taking a normal image, a decent image, but making it exceptional.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for the edit.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, every image, I'm looking at it before I finalize it, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. And then you finalize it, and you look back at it,
Next
and
level.
there's
Yeah.
no comparison.
No comparison.
Absolutely.
Right. Very important.
Yeah. So tell me, Heather, a little bit about your background when you started your photography business and just a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I am actually a mechanical engineer by trade, and I was working in an engineering job as a project manager, and I was pretty good at it, I felt, but I wasn't passionate about it.
Right.
My first daughter was born, and I decided to leave to pursue my passion for photography that I didn't even know I had.
Right.
And I started photographing anything and everything I could get. So I did families and portraits and seniors and weddings, and then it was a couple of years into my business, I decided I loved weddings.
Yep.
So I was going to focus solely on weddings, and I changed my business name. I became Weddings by Heather, and the first year I shot 3, and the next year I shot 30.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome. That's some growth.
It's a little bit of growth, and it just skyrocketed. And I think it was because I found my niche.
Right.
And I knew it was my passion, and I set goals. I'm a goal-oriented person, and I wanted to be the best in our area, and I wanted to have every Saturday with the weddings, and it happened, and it was phenomenal. Now, there are some growing pains involved,
of course,
as you know, with that type of growth, but I figured it out, and business has been booming every year since.
That's great.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is amazing too, and of how important it is to find your niche. And a lot of us, I think, I started doing families as well as pets and horses, and it took about 5 years before, it was about 3 years before I realized that I should be going down to the one niche. Yeah. But it took about 5 years before I actually made the decision to become pet exclusive.
Well, because it's scary.
It is.
Because you're narrowing the field.
Right.
And you're thinking, well, I want to be able to appeal to everyone.
Right.
But the truth is, if you appeal to a few really well, that's where you experience, it's really an inflection point in your business, and you experience a lot of success.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about how you got interested in post-processing, or how you've become such an expert in post-processing.
Oh,
because
yeah.
You are truly an expert.
Thank you. I love it.
She actually taught me a lot about post-processing back in the day.
Thank you. Yeah. What happened was I never intended to start teaching.
Right.
I started my business. I was doing really well, really quickly, and I had a lot of people who noticed.
Yeah.
And were asking me to help them, mentor them.
Yeah.
So I started informally mentoring people very early on, but that wasn't enough for me because I felt like, how can I teach these people when I don't really know what I'm doing? Or I'm learning. I'm in the learning phase. Right. So I decided to put more structure and process around that by becoming more educated myself. So I pursued a certification with Adobe. I'm an Adobe certified expert in Photoshop. Loved it.
Yeah.
Started teaching it to photographers. And then, interestingly enough, and this was kind of strange, serendipitous, I got a phone call from a local college, and they said, hey, we have a photography class that we run, and the instructor backed out at the last minute. Oh, no. Can you teach it? And I laughed because I said, I'm not even sure how they found me, to tell you the truth. Yeah. And I said, well, I could try.
Yeah.
I teach a little bit on the side, but I've never formally taught lesson plans, that sort of thing. So I put together a lesson plan, and I have been teaching 3 to 4 courses a semester, 3 semesters a year, for 8 years.
Wow.
And so I figured out that I loved it.
Yep.
And again, more structure. So I refined. I got better at it. I started studying and teaching, learning how to teach for myself so that I could do a better job for my students. Right. And interestingly enough, sort of side note, is I always shot Canon. Yeah. First half of my career I was Canon. I was teaching a photography class, and someone said to me, you're very Canon-centric, and that's not fair to the Nikon people. And I thought, oh, he's right. It's not. So I rented Nikon gear for the sole purpose of becoming a better instructor. Right. I never dreamed I'd love it. I fell in love with Nikon gear, sold $35,000 worth of Canon equipment, and switched to Nikon. That was in 2010. Yeah. And so I've shot Canon and Nikon, so that was really just to give me the ability to be a better instructor. Right. And so, yeah, the teaching has been amazing. I've had hundreds, I don't know, thousands maybe, of photographers go through my workshops. I've seen many of them experience success And I love just being a tiny little component of that.
Absolutely. I think as for myself as a teacher, hearing about success from your students is
it's everything.
The best thing ever.
Yeah.
We love that so much. So I remember when I got started and I got Photoshop. It was before I even had Lightroom. I just started with Photoshop and I opened up, actually it was Photoshop Elements.
Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I opened it up and I was like, ugh.
What is this?
I looked at the screen. I closed the screen. I said, I'm going to need a book.
Yeah, it's too much.
It's so overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah. And Lightroom was similar. You open it up and you're like, it was a little bit more intuitive, but not that much.
No.
And, I mean, Adobe makes great products, but they're not really
easy to pick up.
Easy to learn. Yeah. So, how do you recommend the best way to go about
learning all that?
Yeah, it's so overwhelming.
Yeah, it is so overwhelming. Well, let's talk about Photoshop first.
Yep.
Photoshop is an extremely robust program, and there's so much that we can do, but that doesn't mean we should do it.
Right.
So I think the best way to start with Photoshop is to tackle one maybe task at a time and build upon it. Mm-hmm. So for instance, you don't want to go into Photoshop and think, I have to learn this entire application, because you don't.
No.
And as photographers, I'm going to estimate that we use about 5% of it, really, on a daily basis. So in terms of pet photography, for instance, I would say, let's learn how to remove a leash. Because it's something we have to do every day. So let's learn that first, get a good handle on it, and then those skills will start to build on themselves. Really, all we need to learn is what we need to fix.
Right.
So we need to identify what do we need to do to our photos on a daily basis in order to improve them. And then I just need to learn those skills. So you don't want to go into it thinking, I need to learn all of Photoshop. Because the truth is you don't.
Right.
There's just a very small subset of tools that you need to learn, but you do need to master them.
Absolutely.
So we learn how to remove a leash, we learn about content aware, patch tool, and then we build on those skills.
Yeah.
Now Lightroom is a little bit different. My approach to learning Lightroom is more comprehensive, and that is, if you're going to learn Lightroom, you need to learn Lightroom in its entirety and understand how it functions as a database and the process from beginning to end. Because if you get started off on the wrong foot in Lightroom, it can be disastrous down the road.
Yeah, it's like the first wrong turn in direction.
And that's it.
If you make the first left, you're going to be way
off
further
course
away than the last left.
So you have to understand the structure, and you have to develop good habits with your file structure from the beginning. So learning Photoshop, small components at a time. Learning Lightroom, take a course. Yeah. Take a course to understand how to set Lightroom up right from the beginning. And it will save you time and money.
Absolutely.
In the long run. I can't tell you how many professional photographers I work with, seasoned veterans, that have been using Lightroom for years, that still come to me and say, oh, something's wrong, or we need to fix this. And I'll look back at their structure and, well, that's because from the beginning, it might have been a better idea to put it here rather than there. So start off on a right foot, and you'll feel more confident about it and know that you're doing right. Take a course. Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of a course, Heather and I have been working on something incredibly exciting. Turns out I teach Lightroom. Actually, tell us about when you started teaching Lightroom. That's a great story. Okay, Lightroom is a relatively new product for Adobe. Yep. It was launched in alpha and then beta in 2006. Okay, I had 30 weddings that year. I was using Capture 30. It was a lot. I was using Capture One to process my raw files. And it was fine, but it was slow. I mean, this was a known problem in the industry, which is why Adobe created it. Right. So Lightroom is announced in 2006. You could get it for free in beta format. I signed up immediately. Talk about overwhelming. Because there was no training. I couldn't Google Lightroom. No. Google didn't even know what Lightroom was. No. So I had to figure out how to learn it. So I'm fumbling my way through it, trying to figure it out. In 2007, it's released version 1. Yeah. So paying version. All of my friends, photographer friends, started to buy it, and they're like, Heather, what is this? Yeah. So I said, listen, this is what I've learned so far. Let me help you with what I've figured out. I started teaching Lightroom very early in 2007. So I always say spring semester, but it's January, February. Early in 2007, and I just developed a following of people that knew I became an expert in Lightroom. So I was teaching it nonstop because I was certainly the only local resource. And then obviously over the years, training programs have popped up. But early on, I mean, there was nothing, Nicole. I didn't know, what is a catalog? Where is it stored?
Right.
Are my photos in Lightroom? What is going on? What are these?
Why did I move it and now it's gone?
I don't understand. Why these error messages and how where, what?
Yeah.
So I figured it out, just trial and error and headaches. I mean, it's not pleasant.
No.
But I knew it was the answer. And the reason I knew that, by the way, as an aside, Apple released Aperture at the same time.
Oh.
You remember Aperture was the competing product?
Right.
So there was this big debate on do I Lightroom or Aperture, and my thoughts were I'm going with Adobe because Adobe is the expert in image processing. Adobe has Photoshop. Right. Okay, Apple's expertise is not in image processing. They're good at a lot of things.
Right.
But so I knew that the R&D would be thrown into Lightroom more than Aperture, and I'll be darned if a couple of years ago Apple didn't pull that product.
Yep.
So all the people that were using Aperture are now coming over to Lightroom, and they need to learn it, and I'm going to teach them.
Yeah. And teach well.
Thank you.
No, this course we put together, I'm so excited about it. We've been brainstorming with it for a while, and she has so much expertise in teaching the intricacies of both of these programs and breaking it down for exactly what you need to know, because like we said, Photoshop we use 5%. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about this course that we created and how it's set up.
Well, let me say this. With all of my courses, I like the content to be really focused, targeted, yet comprehensive. And so what I mean by that is I'm going to teach you everything you need to know, but nothing you don't need to know. So if there's something I don't mention, it's because I don't feel it's important enough to your workflow.
Right.
I'm all about consistency, because I believe that consistency leads to efficiency. If you do the same thing over and over, you're going to get faster at it, which is the name of the game when it comes to editing, right?
Absolutely.
As much as I love it,
time is money.
I don't want to be tied to my computer, right? So the training is very targeted. So let's take Photoshop, for instance. I don't teach you every single thing you need to know, only the things you need to know in Photoshop, not the entire program, because you don't, but you need to understand layers, and you need to understand how to remove bleaches, and you need to understand sharpening, and everything related to pet photography. I'm going to teach that, very targeted. I kept the videos very brief, so they're about 3 to 5 minutes long, because we know you're busy, and we want to make sure that you're able to get through the training, but then also understand and apply it. So we're including the exercise files. So you can take the same photo that I'm working on, you can work on it alongside me, and that we just believe that that will really drill it into your brain on how to do it, and it's more likely to be learned and then applied on your own images if you're able to see how we're doing. So that's Photoshop. Now in terms of Lightroom, I mean, I'm so excited about both of these modules, but the Lightroom module is broken down into 3 components. I have the library module, the develop module, and then I combined all of the export modules. But I start by teaching an overall workflow. We have to understand where we're at in the process before we dive in at the micro level. So I take a high-level view. This is my workflow. You share your workflow as well, and in fact, how you edit your sessions. And I say this is, where your image travels from beginning to end, and then we go really deep into each module. We spend a lot of time in the library and develop modules because that's where you're going to spend most of your time. There are 55 videos, again, brief and targeted, but entirely comprehensive. I mean, I feel like it's some of the best I've ever put together, and we use pet photos for all of it. We have dogs, we have chickens, we have horses. It's fantastic.
That's great.
It's fantastic. So I'm really, really excited about it. I think it will revolutionize the way people see their editing.
Absolutely. And the one thing I'm so excited for is I know when I'm learning something new, I love to see the big overarching view of how it works and to drill down for the specifics of how this particular thing works too. But then I really appreciate being able to see how someone takes it and applies it to their workflow. So this is going to be one of the important things in here is Heather's going to really break down all the details, from the big picture to the small picture in Lightroom, and really dive into all the specific Photoshop editing techniques you need to know. And then I'm going to take you through how I call an image or how I call a session, because we do a similar but totally different process. So you can learn these different ways to do it. Figure out a system that works perfectly for you, but you can look through how I do it. It might give you some tips and tricks of how it might apply to you, just so you can kind of see it in action. So we go through a whole calling of an entire session, and then I take you through the editing of a whole session. I usually go from an import of about 450 images down to final export of 35 to 50 images for the client to see for the sales session in less than 90 minutes. It shouldn't take a long
I was
time.
just going to ask you if you knew about how long it took you to finish a session. Yeah. And I was thinking it should take between 1 to 2 hours.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
There's no reason you couldn't shoot a session and have it done and ready to go within the same day. Now, you wouldn't want to deliver it the same day, but you would have it ready.
Yeah. It shouldn't take a long time.
It should not.
And, you know, when you're first learning things, of course it takes longer, but learning these best practices can really just save so much time. And then some of the other things that are in there are, we have a couple different actions in there, and there's one that's really, really exciting because I know, at least around here, I don't know what it's like. Maybe you're in Phoenix and you don't have this problem as much as we do, but any place that you have a lot of spring grass, it comes up fluorescent green in the
yellow,
spring, and the winter's been yucky and you haven't really been shooting, and then everybody's waiting for spring and it's coming up spring and oh my gosh,
and then it's
but
spring.
I have the fluorescent green.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, so this has been a problem in my photography as well, and I don't know why I find this green extraordinarily offensive, but I do.
It's so bright.
Yeah, it's just so bright.
Unnaturally bright.
And it distracts from it. And I actually believe it has something to do with digital capture because it didn't occur on film. So I developed a set of presets. There are 8 of them in order to map these greens to more pleasing hues. So everybody has a different style or personal preference. That's why I created 8 of them. I use the green one, for instance, all the time. But it's a one-click edit in order to improve the tonality of the greens, and it is amazing. So we've included those presets in this training. In addition to including the presets, I also explain sort of the science behind it.
Right.
So for those that are really curious, or how does that work, or why does it look so much better? Because it's not as simple as desaturating greens.
Right.
It's about mapping colors. So I detail that in the training as well.
Perfect. It sounds great. We've also included a couple Photoshop actions. Tell us about the...
Yeah, the Photoshop action, because I'm all about efficiency. And one thing I want to note is in all of this training, I really emphasize keyboard shortcuts.
Yes.
So I drew, and we have a printable for people to print so that they can start to learn them. And you will commit them to memory. You don't need to learn them all, just ones you use every day.
Right.
So I ask myself, if I'm repeating something over and over, is there a way for me to automate it? And those are actions in Photoshop. So I've created this action for enhancing eyes. So you run this action and then you can sharpen, improve the catch light, and add contour. You don't need to do all 3 of those things, but whatever you need, it's available for you. And you can run that on your dog's eyes, your cat's eyes. I use it on chickens, and it's fantastic.
Perfect. So the course is called Post-Processing for Pet Photographers, and it is available now, and we really hope you'll join us.
You're going to love it. It's going to improve your editing, and again, I want to drive home the importance of consistency. Everybody wants to develop a consistent style, both in their shooting and their editing. And besides having all of your photos look like they've come from the same photographer, I also believe consistency leads to efficiency. So I want you to be able to edit your photos in a pleasing manner and in a very timely fashion.
Yeah,
that's the name of the game. Right? Time is money.
Thanks so much for joining us. Bye, everybody.